Hello and welcome to GFW Radio. This is Jeff Green from GFW Magazine, and I'm here with the full editorial crew today and two special guests who are giving us a little chunk of their time from today graciously in this busy conference. And as I did yesterday, I'm going to let the men introduce themselves, starting with you, sir.
Hello, Chris Taylor, CEO, founder, Gas Powered Games. Great to be here on this fine, exhausting Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I'm Josh Mosqueira, design director at Relic, sort of one of the guys responsible for Company Heroes.
Weren't you like lead designer? You don't have to be so humble.
Yeah, I was.
One of the guys.
But really, it's really a team thing, right? I can't take all the credit, just most of it.
Sure you can. And so Company Heroes 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, opposing fronts. 2.
Right. Okay.
That's how much
that doesn't
Jeff
count.
knows about.
Yeah, that's how much I played your game.
I played your games.
And Homeworld 2 before that.
Yeah.
But not the Dawn of War series. I asked this before we podcast.
Did we get to mention Chris's games?
No, we're just going to talk
Total
about Josh, and we're going to make
Supreme
Chris
Commander.
feel shitty the whole
Supreme
time.
Commander has an expansion
Doesn't
as
hurt
well.
my feelings.
Forthcoming Space Siege, as well as some oversight over Demigod, right?
Demigod,
right.
which was on our last cover.
That's right.
So, see, we have some love for you.
Yeah, appreciate that. That was a great cover.
Thank you.
Really love that cover.
So I'm glad you did. Actually, my first question for you was about that. It was just, when we first started talking about that game, it actually didn't come out right away that you weren't the, that you were working with an outside development team on that. And I'm just wondering for you what the experience of that is for you personally, being in that sort of position as opposed to like the lead guy in charge on the project.
Well, it's an internal team. I'm just in a role where I sit down with the guys and I talk about the design with them, but I'm not the lead visionary designer. Like typically, I come up with a game and I lead it, and I'm the creative force behind it. Well, this was John Combs, and he worked with his guys, the producer Bob Barry and Nate Simpson, the lead designer, the lead artist, and they really formed the creative vision of the game, and I'm the guy who supports it and to some degree shields the world from it. There's a certain amount of shielding that goes on. In this case, it's not as hard because when I run the company, I have an easier time of it. But if I go back 10 years to Cave Dog, where Ron Gilbert, for example, was doing that role with me on Total Annihilation, he was shielding me from GT, who bought Humongous, who in a situation like that, where a company buys a developer, and they were a publisher developer, it'd be easy for them to come in and say, "Hey, what's this game? Total Annihilation. We're going to get our fingers in there. We're gonna rip it apart. We're going to change it. We're going to do all this stuff." So he did a lot. He really had to work harder to shield. I don't have to work as hard, but I'm in that position. So that's kind of what my role is, and so forth. So,
are you allowed to contribute design ideas, or do you want to, or do they just like, yeah, Chris, that's great. If you could just get the hell out of here so we can work, that'd be great.
If I have any ideas, I'll throw them out there. I'm happy to, and I'm sure the guys would field those ideas. And but I've got a lot going on as well, creatively in the company. So I'm not really a monkey on their back creatively. So they're really quite free to just focus on that while I'm busy doing the other stuff.
Josh, is Relic in a position where you need shielding from THQ, presumably?
Actually, our relationship with THQ is actually really awesome. They sort of let us do our thing. It's more the other way around. We keep kind of going to them and trying to ask them, especially from the marketing side. So what do you guys, how can we help you guys sell our games? Type thing. So generally, they're pretty hands-off.
Okay, so
That's like how we are with Microsoft.
actually it is.
It kind of is.
They don't. Yeah. Most of the time we forget that there's a.
Right.
I shouldn't be saying that on there, but most of the time, I mean, that's a good thing though. From an editorial side, the last thing we'd want is any sort of dabbling on,
Right. Yeah. No. People always ask us, like, so how much is Microsoft interfering in your magazine? And we're like, we don't think they remember they have a magazine, which is awesome.
So you guys clearly, all your experiences, not all of it, but experiences in RTSs. And the question I know it's been a concern for you, and I'm assuming it's a concern for you as well. When I say you, I was talking to Josh, and since our listeners can't see my finger, now I'm including Chris. This is that our RTS is in danger of falling into a place where fighting games got, where at first they were, Street Fighter came out, Street Fighter 2, a ton of people played it, and then they continued to cater to the most diehard segment of their fan base, becoming, increasingly complex, but giving more, the more that, it was great for those of us that were that into it, because the more that we'd invest in the game, the more we'd take from it. But I was just wondering if you guys worry about, RTS as a genre, if it's potentially, shrinking its potential audience.
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, one of the warning signs was when they lumped us with the AIS awards with simulation, which at one point in the 80s was one of the big genres, right? But now it's sort of like, you can hear the crickets.
Right.
So when they...
But it's like you got your calculator wristwatch on,
exactly.
when you're...
So when they lumped, strategy games and simulation games together, that's kind of like, it's no longer a strong enough category to be by itself, right? So I do think that there is a huge concern with, the overcomplex. We make our games a little too complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really easy for us to forget there's a difference between depth and complexity. And a lot of the times I think we go for complexity, and that isn't necessarily what we really want from our games. So,
Chris?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think there's a component of complexity, but also piracy that contributes heavily to it. We're seeing a crossover now to the console, so we'll see how we do there. We could really come back strong now that we're on multiple platforms, and we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how the console community votes with their dollars now on that platform, and if they welcome the genre there, it'll strengthen it, and we can go deeper and more complex, or we can back off there. But in general, I tend to agree we still need to dial back the complexity knob across the board out of principle. We need to be able to jump in. I think tutorials in general just don't belong in video games. I mean, I don't think tutorials belong in entertainment. I don't want to read a tutorial if I'm running a VCR. Hell, if I had to read a tutorial to run my microwave oven, I'd probably, have a fit. Let alone any other entertainment device or any other device in my house. So why do I want to run a tutorial on a video game?
When you're about to have fun with it.
Yeah.
Do you think, are you thinking along the lines of, rather than like an all or nothing, our games need to become uniformly less complex, where you have that element of complexity still there, but then you also have like some other access point that's not a tutorial that can get people in? Because my big thing was, I was an RTS player long ago, stepped away from it forever, and then when I wanted to come back, I'd frequently see something, this looks really interesting, I think I could like this, but then you open the box and the first thing, even before I get to the tutorial, I'm looking through the manual, and I'm like, good God, this is work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to have fun right now. But then it's like when I do finally get down, and when I finally got back down, and it was with Company Heroes, and played, you finally hit the moment where you're no longer worrying about the system, you're no longer thinking about anything, and you're just engaging the system and having fun. And then it's incredible, and you get, in my experience, you get a lot more out of it than you do from all these other genres that are immediately accessible. So it's like, I'd hate to lose the one at the expense of the other, but then, whenever I try to turn someone else on, like, let's go play Supreme Commander, Company Heroes, it's like, where do I start?
Yeah,
Should I play the campaign? Will that teach me multiplayer? Will it not? I mean...
Yeah, there are huge barriers to entry, and I think one of the things that's important is we're not necessarily saying that we need to dumb the RTS down, right? But just really need to sort of really rethink some of the assumptions. We need to rethink some of the conventions that we hold too dearly, and we say, we can't change that. And really start asking ourselves, how can we do a better job of taking players into the experience, let them do all that learning so they can start seeing all the nuances and all the juice that makes a strategy game really awesome, but in a way that it doesn't totally intimidate them. And one of the examples we keep using at Relic is WoW, right? Now, one of the cool things about WoW is if you look at the screen of somebody who's level 5, and then you look at their screen where they're level 60, the comparison is very little UI, very simple, but level 60, there's all this crazy complexity. Like it almost looks like you're staring at a sort of Vegas casino, right? Mm-hmm. But what's the time frame there, right? We're talking days, months, weeks, and stuff like that. Whereas in an RTS, you go from 0 complexity to maximum complexity in 20 minutes.
Right.
And that's one of the big barriers that we have to break.
I always think about, along with WoW, Blizzard did a great job with their strategy games in terms of, instead of tutorials, and certainly they're not the only company that did that with their RTSs, of kind of building an invisible tutorial into the first few levels of the single-player campaign. The first scenario or two of Warcraft 2 was like, build 4 farms. So it's basically just like teaching you the mechanics and then ramping it up sort of invisibly, so that by the time you're at like the 5th level of the single-player campaign, you're now engaging the system, as Sean was talking about.
Right, and that's both of your games as well. Your campaigns do.
Right. I mean, so don't you feel like, Chris, you said you don't want to ever see a tutorial in your game again, and I think I probably agree with you, but certainly you've done that too, in terms of making it just be part of the experience of getting the player up to speed, just in the course of the game.
Yeah, we do. We integrate it into the early campaign. We add the tutorial anyway for people who want to just go through it. It's there for comfort. But unfortunately, there is a lot of complexity to the game that just kind of needs tutorial, advanced command systems and stuff like that. And it's kind of like we create a game that is so deep that it's not about what the game actually is. It's about what the game looks like in a box on the shelf from 10 feet away, that you would bounce off of if you're in the store going, it's a nice Saturday. I think I will buy a pleasant game to take home and curl up with. It's like, no, that's not it. That looks like it'll hurt my brain. Kind of complexity, like chess versus, Peggle.
Sure.
Yeah, who said that?
Yeah.
That's that competitive brain melting feeling versus the relaxation sort of entertaining. I mean, TV, movies, listening to a music CD, that's pure entertainment. And video games historically haven't really embraced pure entertainment. They've embraced it's like just the hard puzzles in a crossword puzzle book. And I firmly believe that we've got to, and I'm getting away from just RTS discussion here, but our whole industry has already made several steps towards it, but we've yet to fully really march over into the land of just, hey, I got a video game and I played it all weekend, and I didn't really try to get a high score, and I didn't really try to test my reflexes, and I didn't try to test my memory retention and my problem-solving skills. I just played this video game all weekend long, and I had fun with it. And somebody says, "Really?" And yeah, and I didn't do any of those those things that I talked about. That's going to be an important step forward for our craft.
On PC, those games are certainly, notwithstanding Sims and World of Warcraft, those are the games that are selling right now. I mean, the casual games, the PopCap games like Peggle that came up.
There's still skill in them though, but
Peggle is very, very close because just chaos is such a huge component in that game that it is very close to where I think you'd have to, if you're going to defend the game, you're going to have to do the bulk of your work explaining why it's anything other than like a slot machine. And we've all done that. And we've all done that in our show. But I think when most people play it, they're like, it's fun because pretty colors come up and I feel like I did something and I get points. I mean, but again, it's like you get points, but you can't do anything but get points. So it's not quite.
It's as skillful
I worked
as
on the points all weekend.
on, Price is Right.
You mentioned piracy and as a limiting factor. And I just want to say, like, how extensive of an issue do you think that is for PC gaming?
Well, I look at metrics like I look at NVIDIA, how many video cards they're selling, how successful that company is, and I know how most of the success of that company comes from the high-end video cards and the dual SLI treatments that hardcore gamers are installing. And I know that they typically go out and buy they're the kinds of players that buy the high-end games and the difficult games. They're very smart players. And when you look at the sales of games like Crysis and Call of Duty 4 and compare those to the sales of take Call of Duty 4 out compared to the Xbox 360 sales. There's an incredible difference in the sales, and you know that there's probably way more people in the world that have rigs that'll run the game on the PC. So there's something's broken, and it's kind of all back of the napkin theory, but somebody somewhere is buying really high-end video cards and they're not buying games to go and play on them. And so there's something going on there.
What about you, Josh? I mean, do you have any more direct evidence for, like, say, company heroes?
Nothing like
You catch people. I mean, are you able to see? Are people with cracked versions able to even play online?
Well, they're able to sort of circumvent a lot of the stuff we try to put up there to try to prevent it. And, again, there's nothing direct. And as Chris says, all behind the napkin type stuff. But if you just compare the number of, downloads of our patches compared to the number of copies that are sold,
and there you go.
Everybody must be downloading like 5 copies of those patches for whatever reason. But those numbers are totally skewed.
On that magnitude, 5 times?
Well, I wouldn't say the magnitude is it's high. I wouldn't say 5 times. I might have been exaggerating, but it's noticeable, right? And it's it hurts. Right?
So is this affecting your studios? When you look at the future and the platforms that you're going to develop on, is this
absolutely
factors heavily in that decision-making process?
So do you feel kind of as down on the PC right now as Chris kind of sounds, just in terms of that?
You know what? We have a lot of challenges right now in the PC market. I mean, part of it is, piracy, I think, is a really big one. And I think the whole sort of comparing how many people are buying video cards, how many people are buying games is a really good analogy. But even our system requirements are insane. Really, like forcing people to spend anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 for the privilege of playing your game the way it's meant to be played. We're limiting our potential markets. We're limiting how many people we can get, to jump on board and try these really awesome games out. So
okay, so I wonder about that because when you're working on the design docs, I mean, look, this is the classic example that gets brought up all the time right now, and I'm sorry for bringing it up again, but look at WoW. I mean, they've been able to sustain not just interest, but incredible growth in their game over 4 years now with a system spec that's like amazingly low.
Yep.
So why couldn't guys at Relic making a game like Company of Heroes sort of look at their design spec and see where it's going and scale it back and maybe compromise here or there to make that game that would be comparable to WoW in terms of requirements and still have the same gameplay?
I think, to be honest, there's sort of a lot of drinking the Kool-Aid happening. Is just, growing up in a sort of PC studio is sort of like you get sort of like totally like enamored with the whole sort of pushing technology and really driving things forward, and you don't always realize immediately what the cost of sort of pushing those decisions forward, right? Mm-hmm. And I also think that a lot of PC games have really awesome technical art direction, but not necessarily really awesome art direction. And again, WoW is a really good example of that. The min spec didn't really matter because the game looked awesome, right? It looked awesome because of the art style.
TF2 is another one I would say. I mean, but so that's what I wonder sometimes when I'm hearing developers talk about. It's just too prohibitive, and nobody's, then we got to force people to buy these video cards. It makes me feel like, well, this is kind of your guys' fault.
Oh, for sure. I think we're really responsible for a lot of this stuff because we're the ones making it, right? We're the guys pushing the crack out, right?
Yeah.
So yes,
it's hard to be recognized with a new game when it doesn't look really sexy, and sexy is high-end graphics. It's really cool shaders. It's how you get recognized. So there's a little bit of a, we're creating this problem, but we're
kind of prisoners of it too, or
yeah, you know what I'm getting at here. It's hard to articulate it, and so if we want to say, okay, let's create something with a really, really cool art style, and let's bet on the fact that people are going to recognize a really cool art style. That's a really risky bet to make. That they're going to appreciate deep gameplay, but with what could with one slip up look like dated graphics. But it's going to run on 50 million computers that are $800 computers. Woo. And but to the World of Warcraft point, that's a secure environment. There's no piracy, and those guys, I mean, they have something magical. They have the world's greatest brand on the PC. It's unmatched. and you don't have that out of the gate. So you don't build a business plan and say, oh yeah, we can reproduce that. I mean, how many MMOs have tried and failed, and how many more will try and fail? I don't even want to know. I don't want to see the pile of money that is going to be burned up.
Yep.
That scares the hell out of me.
Yep.
Are you
We
guys-
get those demos every week or so here at
It
the
scares me, and it's not even my money.
It seems like there's a couple paths too. I mean, well, far more than a couple. I mean, there's the let's go to the consoles and see how that works, where we have a certain guarantee. And then there's DICE recently announced their Battlefield Heroes game, and that's got a strategy. I'm curious to see what you guys make of that, if that seems viable. And also tied up into that is to knowing that you want to make a game. I mean, because that's a double-edged thing with that, right? It's like, well, it's free, so you can't rip it off, But also, you're going to keep coming back and see the advertisement. But for you guys, because you're talking about how WoW is secure in that way, to get RTSs where they're actually secure in a comparable fashion, based on the way that you design it with, leveling up or whatever the case may be, designing communities into it so that it's really... Or even making it so that it's like if you ban someone from using it, that's going to basically kill the game for him, So, I mean, the original question is, I mean, is it just a case of, well, here's our answer, we're going to go to console? Or are you very seriously looking at these alternatives and even other ones that I haven't mentioned?
No,
If
I
so,
think
what are
we're really serious about exploring the the gamut, right? I think console is only like a sort of interim solution. I mean, none of the sort of console strategy games have really sold really well yet, right? Because again, they're still sort of adhering to the old paradigm of what an RTS is and trying to sort of find a way to copy and paste that onto the console, right? When somebody starts figuring out a way of how to inject some of the sort of RTS magic in a way that works on a console, that might change.
Just like what Ubisoft is attempting with End War, maybe Microsoft with, Halo Wars.
Yeah, but definitely we're exploring sort of different avenues. Like you mentioned Battlefield Heroes. Right now we're working with Shanda in China to do Company Heroes Online, which essentially uses the same model that Battlefield Heroes is working on. I mean, initially we're just releasing that in China, but essentially we have plans that if it works there, we're going to start propagating it across. So, but really we're trying to attack this on many different fronts, right? So we're attacking it from a sort of gameplay and a design perspective by trying to find ways to ease players into the experience without overloading them with complexity. We're exploring different platforms and sort of different delivery methods as well. So.
Chris?
What was the question?
Are you going? Are you moving?
I
Are
was
you
drifting.
taking your ball and going over to the console court?
Oh yeah.
Or
I
are you
remember
gonna?
I was
Gonna renovate
contemplating my
the PC
navel,
court.
and it's not that attractive anymore now that I'm 41. So that's not saying much. The console, the copy paste point is interesting. We're really happy. A little plug here, shamelessly, about SoupCom 360. We're really happy with how that turned out, and the big thing was the strategic zoom, being able to pull out the camera and push it in. If you have a big map and you're trying to slide that map around with the controls, with a console controller, that's really cumbersome, no matter how you dress it up. But by pulling out and pushing in, it's super buttery, and some of you guys may have actually seen it in passing. I don't know. It's great. So when people get their hands on it, it's going to do a lot for RTS games on the consoles, and there's probably a whole bunch of fine tuning and refinements that are going to be made from here on in. But it's just that it's fine tuning.
How are you handling unit selection?
We do double click to select groups. We have a ton of group selection stuff. Our stuff is only one layer deep though, so we don't do a whole lot of complex select this, do this, bring up this menu and select that. We do very, very simple stuff, and you can get access to almost every single command system on the original PC game with the console controller. So it's just really great. You can ferry units around with transports and just do all of that stuff. Lay down waypoint systems and adjust waypoints. You can do all that stuff. So it's really cool. And because it's a strategy game that allows you to pull out and operate at a strategic level, you don't find yourself in a click fest like a StarCraft type game or a Warcraft type game. You actually operate in this big theater of war. So it works beautifully because it isn't a contest of clicks. So we're really excited. I can't wait to see how that works. And because it's a multi-threaded application, when it went over to the 360, it ported over very, very well to the multiprocessor 360. Runs really smoothly, handles all that action. It's worked out really well. So I'm really quite excited. I don't know that we're going to have to hit it, like dumb it down in the future or do anything radical to it. It might actually just continue to just go through refinements to exist there. So I'm optimistic.
So is this serendipitous that it worked out so well on the console, or we're like going back years ago when you started conceptualizing Subcom? Was it in the back of your mind that, like, maybe this thing's going to go to a console someday, so let's kind of build in some groundwork for that?
I'm not going to try to convince you that. It was luck. The strategic zoom was just pure design. That's what I wanted to do on the PC, and then the light came on when you have HD, and you look at the power of the 360 when it emerged, and I was like, the strategic zoom would work really great on the 360, and it turned out to be just that. And people who play it, when I walk through a QA room and there's 20 people all testing Subcom 360, and you stand back and you watch 20 computers and they're all zooming in and out, like all at different times, zoop, 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 and you're like going, yep, look at them. It's not like I'm telling them, hey, you should zoom in and out, it'll work better for you. They're all just doing it on their own. And you put someone in front of the game 5 minutes, they're zooming, and you realize that it's natural. It's what you do on Google Maps. It's what you do in an art program when you're modeling. It's what you do in any application where you want to get the big picture, and then you want to go in and fiddle, and you come out, get the big picture, zoom in and fiddle, and you're zooming under the cursor. You're never zooming to the center of the screen. You're always zooming under the cursor. It's super intuitive, and it's mind-boggling that it took till 2008 for this to come to the surface. We should have been here 10 years ago.
Do you wonder at all, because I do, in terms of the viability of, not the viability, that's not the right word, but here's what I wonder. I'll start again. The RTS genre on the console, to me, is a leap that I wonder if everybody can really make, just in terms of the kind of game it is and the kind of gaming it is, because it is, to some extent, a fairly wonky exercise. No matter how much you make it pretty or make the interface work or the controls work, you're still dealing with managing units, and it's an intense mental experience, which to me is often counter to what you're doing on a console, which is sitting back on your couch. I'm not saying that there's not complex games on the console at all. I just mean that this particular type of game genre, to me, feels more like... No, I'm not. But, I mean, like, just even in terms of, like, the way you might sit when you're playing a game like this. Like, I feel much more comfortable when I'm playing a game like this, basally being like 3 inches from my screen, which isn't just because I'm blind.
You don't do supreme commanding with your feet up on the coffee table and send, or Company Heroes where you're sending actual, humans to their deaths. Go here.
It's more of a moderate commanding kind of situation.
Do you get what I'm saying? Maybe I'm not making it clear. I just think that I wonder if that's a barrier to console players playing RTSs at all.
Well, first-person shooters on the console can get pretty intense too. But I do agree. I like being in a relaxed posture when I play console games. Lean back, feet up, drunk, whatever, and. I'm kidding. I don't drink. I don't touch this stuff really. But so we got to add a little sort of adult content here. Right? Was that it for the whole show there?
Oh, no. We'll take it any way you want it.
Alcohol abuse. No animals were harmed during the show. But the point is, though, there's still a lot of games on the console, though, that'll have you in a sweat, So
Right. I'm not saying that there can't be an intense experience. I mean, just like with an RTS, you're talking about small units on a screen that you're manipulating around a map.
You want to be
which
Homo
to me
erectus when you're playing
isn't
at that.
exactly the same type of experience you're going to get on a television on your couch. What?
Well, that's what we always call we would drive and the guy in your passenger seat's got the seat all up and you just like reach over and grab the things and kick back Homo erectus and all of a sudden he's like, oh, that's comfortable. But that's what we call like the PC gaming posture. Yeah, and you're sitting there, especially in the days of the boom mic, and you're up on your table. Guys, they're coming into our back base. Get back your HQ. You know, that kind of thing.
Isn't that what you're doing every night with
I do it every
Company
night.
Heroes?
Yeah. Except I don't have a boom mic now. I got a mic on my headset.
I'm not saying that.
You guys,
I don't think it's.
know that posture for PC gaming?
Yeah.
They're looking at you a little blank.
Yeah, no.
You guys are
well, we just
confused.
don't want to take the softball pitch on Homo erectus. I think we just don't want. We don't want to touch. We don't want to touch that. I mean, this is a family show.
Not really.
No,
it's not.
I mean,
Don't think
Any
that.
family that listens to this
is like
show
a
has problems.
Beavis and Butthead
Kind
moment.
of. Yeah.
Well, I'm aware of the. I mean, that's part of why the origin of the term, but it just means upright man.
Sure it does. Sure it
Yeah,
does.
there's no subtext.
Let's just go with that.
Let's go with that.
I want to know who comes up with these terms. I want to meet the guy who said, we need a term here. How about Homo erectus, Jimmy? And the guy goes, yeah, that sounds great, Bob.
That sounds like a good job.
Let's go to lunch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
That's a job, but well days.
all in a day's
Yep.
work. Yeah. Okay.
You guys,
Is there a question in there?
I don't know what happened there. Yeah.
are you guys to turn it serious, to turn it from Homo erectus to total seriousness again? You feel you're able to, that your studios, you're developing precisely the games you want to be developing right now, and you're getting the funding from publishers and whatnot, or is it always a matter of compromise? It's just normal course of things that you have to compromise and say, well, we need to do this, and this is going to be on the back burner until we can eventually prevail in one of these, dog and pony shows and get someone to sign up and write the check for this.
Wow, at least for us at Relic, really lucky, man. THQ is basically this. We're making the kind of games that we want to make, and we're making the types of games that THQ wants us to make.
So where's my next Company Heroes expansion?
Oh, it's coming.
Okay, it is?
Well, is it coming? Well, we love that franchise, right?
Right.
And I keep saying it, and it's one of those like sort of wimpy answers, but we have plans for it.
Okay.
You don't just give birth to something like that and just drop it, right? So
And I know
you gotta
I don't
nurture
mean to
it.
conflate what I love with what your studio really wants to be doing, but I think that game was a labor of love, so
It was.
I'm assuming.
It was an epic. Yeah. So, actually, we have guys working on it. Like Quinn Duffy's our senior designer, has now been working on Company Heroes longer than World War II lasted.
Cool.
So
That works for me.
Wow.
Real war short,
yeah,
entertainment experience is long.
yeah.
Yeah, how about you, Chris?
Well, we sort of split it. If you look at my career, most everything I've done has been original. And some of the stuff's done well, some of it's the sort of medium, but it's all original, and I'm proud of the fact that I don't just chase after dollars. I'm not in the glass dollar cage, and I'm in the art cage more. I'm sort of going, hey, I want to expand the art and craft of game making, and that's a tough deal because you got to keep paying the payroll, and you got to keep the lights on in the business, and the industry's getting more more corporate, and it's getting more complex. So we got to pay attention to the way the market's going, and we got to listen to our customers, and we got to innovate, because you can't just always look to the market, because that tends to be a reflection of what has already happened. So it's a complex process, but we still find that the stuff we're doing moving forward is some of the most original games we've ever made. So the stuff we'll announce at E3, the stuff we'll announce at E3 next year. If we do announce at E3, or it could be a GDC, or it could just go out like Demigod did this January.
So you got announcements then, obviously, beyond Space Age and Demigod.
Oh yeah. We've got 2 more games at least to talk about, and maybe another one after that. So lots of stuff in the pipe. and two of those very, very original, very wacky, crazy stuff that you will look at and go, my goodness, that's wild, Chris. That's very Homo erectus.
These are PC too? PC is the platform for Homo erectus.
The Homo erectus game, as we call it.
Is that the name of the game?
It is. It's a game about a
Working title.
It's a game about a guy who wakes up one morning and says, "I don't want to go to work today. I'm gonna just stay in bed." No, it's a.
Oh, I was into it.
Yeah, you like this?
Yeah.
He just drinks pop.
It's
And,
just like cover, big cover.
But these titles are, some are console, some are console and PC. So a real mix, and covering a spectrum, because really moving forward, it's about creating IP and getting kind of a full spectrum across multiple platforms. And when you build content now, and I don't want to sound all weird, but this business tends to kind of pound you flat in terms of getting all this lingo. But when we create content, we create all this rich, expensive content. We really have to get it into as many people's hands as we can, and that really means going out onto as many platforms as possible. So that's what we're doing.
All right. I think, do we have to get Mr. Taylor out of here? Oh, we got 5 more minutes.
Well, how about
I'm not giving you the.
And I got a good question. I stayed quiet up until now, but
Okay,
but I
Ryan's
saying
going
it
to
up.
lay one on you.
this is a totally serious question.
Uh-oh.
This
boy.
is for you. So you got to be honest. What do you think of the Dungeon Siege movie?
We rented a whole theater out, and we took the whole company down there, and man, we had the time of our lives. We had a blast.
But you don't drink.
We were not drinking. We did not get drunk in the theater, but we had a riot. No, we did not drop acid. All great ideas.
Mini things, which they're giving out at the convention. Just had to throw that out.
No, we had a lot of fun. I tell everyone, I try to be as honest as I can, that I'm not a movie critic. So I'm not really a guy who hands out critical reviews of the movie.
Everybody's a movie critic.
Everybody's a critic, eh? Well, I thought that it's definitely one of the best films that Uwe's done, and that's the really key. That's a real key data point. So we had a lot of fun.
What if you you had no association with the property on it, and a friend was asking you, "Hey, should I go pay $10.50 tonight and see this?"
If you were a Burt Reynolds fan, absolutely. Because there's nothing like seeing Ray Liotta and Burt Reynolds and John Rhys Davies all together on the
Those are
silver
some
screen.
real actors.
It's an all-star cast.
Yeah, it really is. It's just good fun, and if you needed your Lord of the Rings fix for 2008, and nothing's coming down the pipe, there it is for you.
That's a good review.
There you go.
Have
There
you
you go.
seen Dungeons and Dragons, the movie? Either of you?
Yeah, no.
I did actually.
What's
that?
better?
Now that's
Which is better?
No. The Dungeon Siege, the In the Name of the King blows that out of the water. I got to tell you the truth. The Dungeon Siege, the Dungeons and Dragons movie was a smoking pile.
All right.
And I'm not a critic. I don't judge. But that was a terrible movie. So
Last one before we put the nail in the coffin on this one. What's better, Shaquille O'Neal's Kazam or Steel, or the Dungeon Siege movie? I just wanted to drop those
I have
names.
not seen that.
That's too bad.
You have answered wisely.
I'm going to go with In the Name of the King as the better movie.
I haven't seen that.
No, you guys should go check it out. I highly recommend.
Is it
you
on
guys,
DVD now?
I don't think so, but when it does, I highly recommend checking it out and then emailing me at Jeff's email, and he'll forward it on.
Hey, what's up with the name of the movie? Who came up with that?
I really don't know. That's a decision that the movie guys figured out.
They couldn't just call it Dungeon Siege?
I don't know. I didn't have a whole lot of close involvement, but I was just happy to see the project move forward. It was an adventure to see the property go to the screen, and at the end of the movie, see my name up there. It was fun to say, hey, I created this property. one day and made a game, and then went to the screen. I asked my friends who made games. I say, how many games have you made that turned into movies? And that always shuts them up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That'll shut Sid Meier right the fuck up. Huh? Civilization the movie, huh? Dumb shit.
Yeah. So hey, it was fun.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. So I'm getting out of here.
And it's time for you to go. Yeah, go have your meeting with Mr. Ball.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the next project.
That
so
Space Age movie. Or is that Homo erectus?
Homo erectus, the
Supreme
return.
Erectus.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Chris Taylor's next game, Homo erectus.
See, look what you've done. Look what you've done.
See, at first you guys were all stone-faced, like, that's not fun. And then you're like, Homo erectus, I can get with that. All right.
Thanks
All
both
right,
to
thanks.
Chris and Josh for coming in today.
So we're going to just keep going with Josh. We have a few more minutes of
do
your
we?
time.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
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 All right,
Hey,
we're going to say
so-
goodbye to Chris Taylor.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming in, Chris.
It's great, Chris. I did want to ask you, Relic is working on other people's IP. And so, barring Warhammer 40,000 as an answer, is there any dream IP that you would like to turn into an RTS or a game of any sort? And answering Battlestar Galactica would make a lot of us happy. No, say what you want.
You know what? Got so many things that are coming to mind. Yeah, Battlestar Galactica would be awesome, but I think we would call it Homeworld.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's how you work though. You got you have your own games, and then you've got you got Dawn of War that you just keep putting the love into.
Yep. There's so many right off the top of my head, because I'm reading it right now, but the Game of Thrones sort of series novel, I think that would just be an awesome.
Fill me in on this. You
George R.R. Martin. Fantasy series. Great fantasy series.
But it's like fantasy without the sucky parts of fantasy.
Yeah, it's more
what's the
down-to-earth
sucky part?
fantasy,
There's
if that makes any sense.
No elves.
You know what? I would almost call it, the whole cyberpunk. If they were gonna do the fantasy version of cyberpunk, it would be it's almost like fantasy punk. It's just a really sort of gritty, low fantasy. It's just a really awesome.
Kind of dark. He kills off main characters all the time.
Oh, totally. And in the most awesome way too. It's you can't believe it. He just killed them. I just read 700 pages and he just killed them.
Yeah.
But yes, I think a lot of really interesting things in terms of what could be done within a strategy setting that makes Game of Thrones really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Josh, have you played Sins of a Solar Empire yet?
No, I haven't. That's actually on my desk at home, waiting for me to actually have time to play it. I'm really, really curious about that. Again, anything that involves spaceships and blowing the crap out of spaceships, I'm all over. So
Yeah.
It definitely riffs off of Homeworld.
Oh,
That'd
for
be
sure.
interesting.
the only thing, and I can't confirm this, is apparently there's no single player.
There's no single-player
campaign.
campaign at all,
Okay.
which goes back to the whole tutorial discussion we were having. 'Cause
Yes.
It has a really lame tutorial. It's 4 different little buttons you push, and it tells you very rudimentary things, and then it just tosses you into the fray.
And can lead into a discussion after you get through this part, throwing too many questions at you once, but just what, how strongly do you believe in the capacity of RTS as a genre to tell stories? Because clearly you've been, you wrote some of the story, some of the dialogue for Company Heroes.
I have. And again, it's a team effort. So it's there's 20,000 lines of dialogue in that game. Stuff like that. But I think...
Although the other meme is the Hans, it's the September snow.
Oh, yeah.
Who wrote that one? Because that goes around my circuit in Ventrilo.
The credit goes to Steven Deinhardt, who's our narrative designer.
You got a name for him.
Yeah, I think he actually does some really, really awesome stuff. And again, his story at Relic is really important, but I think we got to make the distinction between story and narrative. Because frankly, I think story sucks in games, right? And I think whenever people say story, they sort of automatically try to mimic what Hollywood does or what novels do. And frankly, those are much better mediums to tell story. But narrative, on the other hand, something that is sort of experiential, something that's really the setting, sort of makes the world come alive to you and you're sort of interacting with it, I think is different. So that's why we don't call them story designers, we call them narrative designers. And within the frame of an RTS, I think there's a lot of potential for that kind of narrative. Again, at Kevin Levine's talk this morning, he talked about storytelling in BioShock, and he said their main means of communicating their story to the player or their narrative to the player was to the environment. And that is something you can do really well in an RTS, because what are you looking at most of the time? The world. Right? You have this really awesome God's eye view on that world, and I don't think we've done enough to exploit it, to really sort of turn our settings into our main narrative devices.
So would you say you were doing some of that, like in the Opposing Front's campaign mission, where there's a bit of persistence to a mission in that, you might take the town on one evening, and then you continue to hold it over the next few days, and then I mean, again, like narrative, I guess, would work in the sense that you're not really telling a specific story with all these, plot details and stuff, but you're getting a sense of, like, these are the long-term consequences of this kind of interaction, in this kind of a space. And then when you're done and you leave and you go on to the next thing, it's like, well, that town was leveled. That's it.
Exactly. And that was one of the reasons why I know it's huge technological hurdles to sort of get the sort of map persistence to work. But we thought it was really important for that reason. Because, again, stories in RTSs are very sort of, they don't necessarily quite work because you don't have a singular point of view, and they're really difficult to tell because really the experience of an RTS is very non-linear. And to tell a really good story, it needs to be very linear. So again, getting players the ability to go from one map and the choices that they make and what they're destroying and what they're not destroying and the way it affects the next map allows them to craft their own sort of personal narrative of that experience, and it automatically makes it their own. And every time we would have like focus tests with Company Heroes, and even after release, so we kept getting all these awesome stories of all these little moments that just happen uniquely to each player that made the experience come alive to them. Like there's stories of like guys in bell towers and they got, tank went up, destroyed the bell tower, the guy went flying out, and there's all these really awesome sort of micro personal narratives.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the choice you guys took for the campaign stories in Company Heroes is you try to tell, you try to communicate some of the events and stuff through the individual people, individual soldiers, and their characters in that respect that you'll see them. And this is as opposed to like, say CNC3 where you are the general or you're an admiral or, you're someone higher up on the chain of command. So I'm curious why you made that decision and if you see potential in the other formats. So like say for example if there was a Company Heroes 2 and it was set in modern conflict, and then you have these sort of pictures that are like satellite info and it's treating you as though you were someone who was working in back at base and orchestrating the flow.
That's something we might, I think personally, I think one of the reasons Homeworld really work as a story and a game narrative is because the player was always implied, but it was never directly stated who you are within that framework. And in a game with an RTS where really you're controlling so many different things, I think the more sort of implied the player is, the more sort of believable and contextualized the experience can become. And one of the problems that you run into when you have your little guy on screen and you got to worry about whether he can die or not, and just it starts introducing all these questions.
Well, I'm saying where you're never. So in the option I'm putting, it's like you're never shown on screen or anything. It's basically you in your chair. It's Homo erectus is the character, and he is. You never need to fill in specific details for him or her, other than to say like, this is what's happening. These are the stakes. We need you to, we expect like casualty rate over this percentage is intolerable. We need you to do these things. And here's the broader picture. And so that it's kind of playing to the fact that, there's a dramatic irony that when you're controlling all this, you're aware that, say, these guys are losing, even though you're simultaneously giving orders to this squad over here. And these guys aren't going to make it. And, it would be the equivalent of telling guys on this side of the screen, reinforcements are on the way, but, they're not on the way,
Yeah, I think there's a potential in that. And again, we were already starting to explore some of that on some of the projects we were working on, and just trying to add a bit more agency. Because again, like Homer was awesome because the player was inferred, but conversely, a disembodied nobody is not really somebody you can really get behind and get excited about playing. So there's definitely a lot of exploration that we're doing. And again, that's back to your question. Well, are we doing the kind of games that we really want to do? And that's been a really awesome thing about sort of Relic and being part of THQ is that they're letting us sort of play in these really awesome sandboxes and trying to sort of figure out how to really sort of push things forward.
So do you see yourself going in the direction of more longer, complicated narratives, or scaling it back, like maybe not to the level of Sins of the Solar Empire where there isn't one, but are you happy with where you're at now, and which direction are you heading? I
think we're heading, and again, Kevin Levine said this morning, the best stories are the simplest stories, right? Again, Half-Life, right? It's all about just escaping, right? Chronicles of Riddick is another really good example of a game that has a really good story, but is really paper thin. Homeworld, again, get home, right? So I think it's the key of having really simple narrative. That doesn't mean they can't be deep or they can't have meaning or anything like that, but I think sometimes we get too enamored with we're storytellers and we got to tell these complex stories. So it's really finding the balance between having a believable pretext and a sort of satisfying context for your game. and not necessarily flooding the player with tons and tons of dialogue.
Well, like, I mean, you know, all the games that we responded to at GFW, well, you know, the narrative capacity, like Portal, you know, Bioshock and stuff, there's really not that many. I mean, there's not much dialogue. A lot of it's just implied. You just put enough on there to let people fill in, react to it emotionally, and fill in the rest with their imagination, you know. Yeah. Can we, because they're all looking, I want to start geeking out on specific company hero stuff.
But we're all going to leave.
You guys could do that if you have to, because I know there's a lot of our listeners I've turned on to the game and they want to hear. But I want to know, I mean, even basic stuff like, I know most people play the game. They do 1v1. I'm really into playing it either 2v2, 3v3, or 4v4. And I want to know, you know, if you got more 3v3 and 4v4 maps coming.
We have a number of things down the pipe. I think nothing immediate. I think we're in the final stages of releasing our latest patch. It's actually going to introduce Team Auto Match.
Right.
And I think when that's running smoothly, we'll start introducing more maps that really sort of support and encourage sort of team games.
How's the beta been going? Because, you know, in the past what you've done is you've waited and you release a patch, and then you find out that maybe we overlooked something, right? And so now you've got this thing where all players can access the beta patch, and it's constantly being revised. Sometimes it's like, boom, the very next day you figure something out, and it's going back and forth on all the various axes of how powerful something is, if it's too effective or under effective. Is that working out well for you guys? Jeff, just sorry.
Dude, dying over here in the corner.
Wow.
No, our beta patch is going fantastic. It's been a really great process. Again, the more you involve your community, the better the feedback you get, and the more buy-in you get from them, right? I mean, without the community, you really don't have a sustainable game, right? So giving them a chance to sort of help guide that process and telling us what to do in a way that we don't really piss them off because it's not the final patch, it's, I think, a really, really good step.
You ever considered throwing together, like, maybe a couple cooperative missions for people? That was something I really, really wanted.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't finished it. This is the sad thing. Company Hero is my favorite game. I haven't finished any of the campaigns. I've dabbled in them all, and it's because I can't I have to play them on my own.
Yeah, I know.
I want to play them with someone else.
That's one of the challenges we're tackling this year.
So. Okay. That would be awesome.
It would be very
I would
cool.
second the idea that
and it would be
co-op.
Because I find in the game, you're talking about whether or not you find other ways to bring people in and you know, outside of tutorials and stuff. I find through you have someone coach you through it, right?
Yeah, the buddy system.
Yeah, and that way you're able to do it other than just say, all right, God, we got it. Like tonight, it's like I got you know, Robert Ashley, aka Bobito. He's a regular on our show. I got him hooked up. He's going to go in and learn, and he's been trying to campaign. And today at lunch, he's asking me, what about this and this? I'm like, okay, we got to play. But I'm like, great. Now I got to look forward to an evening of like comp stomping. As I tell him, like, don't do that. Quit. It's not StarCraft. Quit making as many of this fucking unit as you possibly can click. You know, like, so that would be cool.
Yeah, I think co-op is a big thing.
So a big thing for future product or for?
Oh yeah, I think again, co-op is huge, right? I mean, I've never finished any of the Halos by myself, right? It's always been co-op, right?
Same here.
And in fact, you know, Call of Duty 4 is an awesome game, right? But I wanted to share that awesomeness with someone, right? So I think co-op is a really big.
Yeah.
So does
why
co-op
did
RTS mean like what, two of you would go against the AI?
Well, imagine the campaigns as they are. They'd clearly have to change them. You know, you'd have to have more enemies, or depending on how it works out, you know, each of you got to balance it differently if each of you are playing different roles and stuff. But
Yeah, I think
you're basically going through the story.
To clarify that, is right now you can actually play co-op, right? Because you can play what we call skirmish mode, so we can all get together and we can, you know, as Sean said, comp stomp, so play against a computer, and so that's a co-op experience. Really, what I'm referring to when I say co-op experience is take our sort of like finely crafted single player experience, where like we're carefully taking the player through a series of really, really cool experiences and allow players to share that, you know, with their buddies, right? So, so already we do skirmish, just adding co-op to our single player campaigns.
Right.
Because tons of single player campaigns have you playing, you know, whatever faction you're playing, and then the other faction, maybe faction B, happens to have a camp over there. So imagine, I'm imagining your friend takes over that, and is the guy sending the reinforcements every 5 minutes or something like that? That would be pretty rad.
So when can we expect to hear more about the expansion and sequels and stuff? Because have you listened to the show ever? You hear me babbling about how I need the Ostfront, or like I could deal with like the ETO, the Mediterranean Theater of Operations, or you know, which also includes Africa. You mentioned a Pacific thing, but it's like, I mean, you guys listen to that? You guys laugh? Are you like smirking?
No,
you're all working on it, or
we have a 5-year plan for Company Heroes, and we're beginning of year 2 or 3, depending when we start the clock. So we love the franchise. Sales could be better,
right?
And again, I think piracy, high sensible specs have a part to play in that as well.
Did you pick up quite a few players this past holiday season?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We broke our maximum players online records. We keep breaking it. Every couple of weeks we break it, so that's a really good sign. As more and more people are playing, and that's really awesome. So,
how have your Steam numbers been as opposed to retail?
Steam has been fantastic.
Can you give us those numbers?
If I could actually find those numbers, I would be really happy.
That's up to you guys, though, right? You guys can say, hey, we were willing to share our Steam numbers, because no one does that.
I don't know. There's a whole sort of machinery in place, and getting those numbers, it requires you got to talk to somebody, and somebody's got to talk to somebody, and it just takes a while for those numbers to get back from us.
Because that's interesting, because what Valve is pitching with their new, how they're making this available, that Steamworks available to everyone's, that like in real time you're able to see so hey, there was whatever, something just happened, and then now all of a sudden we got more downloads. There was an advertisement that ran that the game is 20% off. Boom! Then we just picked up a bunch, all these sorts of things. So you're saying there's some it's just bureaucity involved.
That's why they need Steamworks.
So the what I'm trying to say is generally where we get our sales fingers, and when I say where I get them, we're sort of on the development side, and
right.
We don't really. We're in Vancouver and they're in Calabasas.
You need to know only as far as it keeps your check coming.
Yeah, well, somewhat. But we usually get our data from MPD, but it doesn't track any of the Steam sales. Right. It has to go through a whole different sort of reporting mechanism. The only thing I've heard is that we're selling as well on Steam as we do at Best Buy.
Right.
And those are huge numbers, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's been really good, and it's just great,
That is interesting, though, because there's a lot of us. It's like the Pollyanna approach when you hear about the horrible sales of high-profile PC games. You want to say, well, there's a whole lot going down through digital distribution. So not you don't want to hear the Steam numbers are as good as a specific retail giant, but as that they rival retail sales. Period. Across all.
Again, I don't have the data, but I don't think they're quite right. Like if you add up all the retail sales and all the e-distribution sales, I don't think they're on par yet, but it's definitely. All the games I bought in the last year and a half have all been through Steam.
Right.
So I actually bought Opposing Fronts on Steam.
You had to buy it.
Buy your own game.
I didn't have to. I wanted to because
you got one extra number for you.
Because Steam is just so easy, right? I didn't want to install it because I'm sorry. I just want to apologize for all the people who had we had a really long install time. So sorry about that.
So what about Steam? Using Steamworks for achievements and stuff. You into that?
There's some very interesting stuff. There's some stuff that we've been trying to do on our own, and that's about as much as I can say about that. But it's definitely interesting. I'm glad
interesting
that they're
times
doing
because the game launched as a Games for Windows branded game, so you've got that on the one, but it's not a Games for Windows live game. No. And that's confusing in and of itself, that there's differences in that. But then it's now you got achievements on Steam. It might be an option to go with the Games for Windows Live thing. Yep. Can you even talk about that? What's your take on Games for Windows Live?
Well, my personal take
for PC, that is.
It works fantastic on the 360 because there's no other way of doing that kind of stuff on the 360. On the PC, they have some big challenges, right? Really, I don't think there's any studios any of the big studios that have jumped on the Xbox Live, and it's just they're just trying to apply the same model they had on the console onto the PC, and there's some really good stuff in there, but I do think being a little bit more flexible will sort of encourage more sort of developer
basically
interest.
Doing what Valve's doing.
Yeah, possibly.
All right, we're getting the wrap-up signals.
Well, Ryan and I have to split, so you guys can keep talking if you want. You've got a GDC appointment.
Carry on.
Ryan says carry on.
Yeah, I have 10 or so more minutes.
Okay, well, we could be good then. You want throw a finale in?
Okay. Do you mind
shoot the shit with Josh on his way out the door?
Okay.
So now that you gave us this wonderful conclusion.
Thank you.
How about this? Homo erectus, and we out.
Thanks for coming in, Josh. We really appreciate
Skip,
it.
use your editing magic to make that an awesome.
Try to
awesome
edit
ending.
some.
There's
great
no
ending
editing.
out of this.
This is GDC.
Oh, so
This
it's
is like he's
happening
doing
this way?
these over and over again all day.
I know,
He
I
presses
know.
process,
I'm
he
sorry.
presses post,
Is there a way we
bam,
can
out
get
the
out of
dough.
this?
No, this is all going up.
That is awesome.
This is all part of the show, and we out. That's why I said we out.